biological matter has the ability to ascend, which means to raise up its atomic and molecular structure into higher coherent states, or it can descend, meaning destructuring molecularly into lower coherent states. Remember, coherence is a word meaning the increasing of organization and structure. We use this concept to understand how form and matter can change and transform into different states. So let's explore water's miraculous essence more deeply by understanding and comparing some other familiar forms. To begin, let's break down what it means that water is crystalline. What is a crystal? The simplest definition of a crystal is something whose molecular arrangement is in an organized, repeating geometric pattern. There is a well-known set of these organized geometric patterns and structures that occur in form that meets the definition of crystalline. This is called crystallography patterns. That refers to the Platonic solid states that all crystals form that defines them as crystalline, like cubes, tetrahedrons, and octahedrons. Now let's explore another familiar form of matter, carbon, on its journey into a diamond as an excellent example of this principle of coherence and the ascension or descension of matter. When carbon is unstructured, like bulk water, it forms dense black coal. When it is slightly more structured and more dense, it forms graphite. And when it's highly organized and compressed, it becomes a diamond. It's still carbon in all these forms. The only difference is the molecular arrangement. So just as coal evolves to become compressed into graphite and then a diamond or crystalline state, so too does all life have the potential to move from the lower dense format that is fixed, rudimentary, and incoherent or disorganized to a more organized and higher vibrational and energetically dynamic state that is structured and crystalline in nature. This is what the ancient alchemists were up to in their laboratories after all, turning lead into gold. Our bodies have the same potential to be made of the water equivalent of carbon or of diamonds. Yet our Western medical and material science systems and primitive understanding of hydration treats the human body like coal. It's time for an upgrade of our understanding. Now let's continue to explore water's many wonders. We have learned that water in its high coherent state is a liquid crystal. Well, what is a liquid crystal? Let's begin by further defining what a solid state crystal is. Quartz crystal is SiO2 or silicon dioxide. Both water and quartz form hexagonal bond matrices. A hexagon is another geometric form associated with crystals. In its most simple configuration, you can recall the honeycomb hexagon patterns of a beehive. Note how nature is constantly repeating and using these sacred geometries to build and sustain life. In the case of water as a liquid crystal, it forms hexagonal sheets, which are able to move independently because they're not glued together by protons, as they are in the case of a quartz, which is in a solid state rather than a liquid one. So when we talk about structured water, you can think of it as being like a liquid quartz crystal. It's well known that crystals are storage devices and transmitters. Quartz crystal is used in electronics because of its ability to store and transmit information. It's used inside watches and computers as it carries piezoelectric energy. Every cluster of molecules within quartz functions as a type of memory cell. These clusters differ in size and intricacy, including hundreds to even thousands of molecules. Water also forms these microclusters when it's in its liquid crystalline state. Most commonly, they're collections of 3 to 60 molecules of varying patterns. Each microcluster or memory cell in the water has at least 440,000 distinct panels. Think of the panels on a satellite to get an idea of what I'm talking about. They are like the antennas in a satellite array. Within crystalline water, each of these 440,000 panels is responsible for sensing, storing, amplifying, transducing, and transmitting information, energy, vibration, and light. This is also known as a fractal antenna because it has so many additional surfaces to hold and transmit information. You have a fractal antenna in your cell phone. That is how it can carry so much information in such a small space. But water's fractal antenna capabilities are profoundly and exponentially well beyond this minor cellular phone technology. These crystalline water clusters are like little molecular icebergs of liquid crystal floating in bulk water, which become more dense and glacial as the water becomes more organized in its fourth phase. These clusters also create greater coherence in the energies that move through them. In other words, frequencies become more connected, equally dispersed, or in phase with each other. We call that harmony. As an example of what this means, think of the way light that is shown through a crystal prism becomes ordered into the spectrum of light. In the same way, vibration or energy transmitted through the crystalline phase of water becomes more ordered, more harmonic, more balanced. This is why water or crystals have the ability to create transference effects. Transference is simply the transfer of information. Structured water has a higher frequency than, say, bulk water, and it can raise the frequency of bulk water when it interacts with it or is near it, meaning as the vibratory rates increase, so will the molecular structure reorganize. It's all information about how to structure form, and what is higher in coherence and structure will always reorganize anything else that is lower. This is called entrainment. This is also how sound and light healing works. The higher coherence in higher frequency sound or light entrains or organizes what it comes into contact with into higher formats and frequencies. It reorganizes lower formats and patterns into higher, more coherent ones. And when sound or light are moved through a crystal, this is enhanced and amplified many times over. This is the true foundation of what we call healing in all forms. It's actually an ascension of matter into higher formats, as disorganized, chaotic forms are restructured and reorganized into higher formats. You recall in part 1, we discussed how structured water gave the information to our cells about how to function and operate properly. We also saw how what we call disease is the loss of the cell's ability to operate in a state of coherence. And the resulting chaos from this loss of coherence is what we experience as disease on a molecular level, as structure is lost and random disorganization takes over the cellular function. Cancer cell mutations are a perfect example of this concept. Without the structured liquid crystal water cellular fluid matrix in an organized state that is transmitting instructions for proper function and multiplication, the cells go haywire because they lose their correct polarity charge, which keeps them spaced and functioning properly, and they begin reproducing at abnormal higher rates, forming large incoherent clusters we call tumors. So you can now see that liquid crystal water is the most powerful computer, meaning it can store and transmit exponentially more than a standard silicone computer. And this is what we're made of in our human bodies. Consider the way computer memory works compared to this ordered water, as the two are very similar. Computer memory is a crystalline structure that consists typically of quartz crystal silicone molecules arrayed in 3 dimensions, and each atom within the molecular structure is capable of 2 different configurations, which are interpreted as a 1 or a 0 or an on and an off. And because there are so many of these atoms, the computer can store a lot of information. Now consider this 4th phase, this crystalline form of water. The oxygen and hydrogen are also organized in third-dimensional honeycomb sheets. The oxygens are particularly stable in this matrix. They're arrayed, just like a satellite, in fixed stable points. They're not bouncing around randomly. Do they have the same two differing states of 1 and 0 or on and off like silicone does? No, water does not. Water has 6 hexagonal honeycomb states, just like the hexagonal honeycomb of the bees. So returning to the computer analogy, if you had 6 states of silicone rather than 2, it would be an increase of information density that is something close to 1 billion times the information density compared to a computer. In other words, water, which our body is made of, and its molecules are about 1 billion times more intelligent than even the world's most advanced computer. Water is key to the transference of information so the body can function. Absolutely every piece of computer data in the world, the whole internet, every digital image in existence is just made of ones and zeros arranged in a particular way within silicone geometries. But crystalline water is creation's single most malleable and powerful computer. Isn't water fantastically amazing? We haven't even begun to understand all the astounding properties it contains. For example, no one has yet figured out exactly how to access all of these 6 states, but nature herself accesses the graceful mystery of this liquid crystalline intelligence in every orchestration of life, including you. Now we can comprehend the immense power of water, as it contains and carries the entire memory of the entire history of our planet, solar system, and galaxy, and even information beyond form within each and every molecule. This is why it is said in all esoteric traditions that water is life. Water holds the blueprints for all forms and all levels of life and beyond into non-form realms of creation. If you were to point to one substance that most closely resembles the fractal geometry of our source creator, it would be water. And you, my dear human soul, are made of 99% of this precious godlike substance at a molecular level. Can you see why all spiritual masters have proclaimed that God is within you? Let's review. The Ascension of Matter, also defined as alchemy, is describing a process where natural organic components have the ability to form higher organizational structures and potentials. This higher organization causes a change in vibrational frequency that emits patterns of harmony and stability and moves away from chaotic randomness. The human organism follows this pattern, and our human consciousness works with this exact same principle. So as a human being raises their consciousness into higher harmonic states of emotional and mental pattern balance, this commands our own biological organism to shift and change into higher coherence.